Welcome back to our community. Susie Thomas visiting with Joe Vitale Jr. every once in a while on our community. It is just fun to pick an interesting person who lives here and find out what makes them tick. And so we're so happy to have you as a guest this morning, Joe. We were talking a little bit about the inspiration for your music, faith being such a huge part of it, overcoming adversity, you said, is a main theme that goes through it. Talk about that a little bit, please.
Well, growing up, my family's always been a very well-founded, well-grounded family in faith and Christianity, and I have always been raised a Christian. I accepted Christ when I believe I was 7 years old at the time, so early on. And I'll tell you, it's been difficult at times. I just put a post out the other day actually on Facebook, and it was talking about I was kind of announcing my faith. Everyone knows that I'm a Christian anyway, but I like to every now and then put a nice post promoting God, and I like to promote a lot of messages on my Facebook page. So what I had mentioned there too is, when you become a Christian, that doesn't mean that life isn't going to just suddenly become perfect. In that sense. Yes. I always tell people, like, a lot of times, especially when people first become Christians, I'm like, expect to have a few things thrown at you right off the bat, because the enemy is always trying to come in, and he's it's an area that not a lot of people sometimes like to talk about in that sense, but the devil's out to get us any way he can. And anytime you're making any advances in your faith, anytime you are trying to help others, not get sent to hell, essentially, he's going to throw something at you. And it gets laughable sometimes, because you'll be sitting there and you get to a point where you start recognizing what it is. And
with maturity.
Right, exactly. And it takes time. So I try to always, through my life, I've had a lot of adversity come against me. I've had a lot of health issues. I've had different situations in my own career fall apart and stuff. But the thing that's always been my focus, and the thing that's always kept me going, was my belief that all this would be okay, because God has me right in the palm of His hand, and He knows where He needs me to be. And honestly, it's like when I do have those, and you're going to have those triumphant moments too. It's not like you're just going to be, okay, I'm a Christian now. Okay, now the world is going to suddenly come against you.
True.
It does at times, but at the same time, there's a lot of joy. There's a lot of triumph. And I always tell people, it's not always the easiest walk, but it is totally worth it. And in the end, we win. So it's like it's one of those things where it's a tough journey sometimes, but on the other side of it, you come out a far better person. And I've always tried to, for me growing up, I've always asked God to make me the person He wants me to be. I always tell Him, even when my own human self tries to take over, because we're all flawed. We all have our own, that we want to do this or that, whatever. It's like I always tell God, I'm like, I'm overriding myself. Here's what I want You to do with me. I want Your will for my life overriding my own. And there's certain things, of course, we still should pray and ask for things and that. But at the same time, I always add to every prayer, if this is in Your will.
Yeah.
Because there are times, and I've seen it play out, where there's been something I have been so after. I'm like, okay, I really want this to go down my life. I really want this to occur. And I pray about it, and then it doesn't happen, or it just seems like it goes to the wayside. And then, like, some time later, not always, but sometimes later, you'll find out that would have been the most horrible decision to make in life.
Right.
And even finding my wife, I was in a relationship at the time right before we met, and it was an on and off kind of relationship, and I didn't know if I was supposed to be with this person or not. And I prayed. I literally fasted for about a week in the evening. Being hypoglycemic, it was usually my snack in the evening.
Yeah.
But I literally fasted for a week and prayed about it. And I said, like, Lord, and this prayer has always worked for me. I've been like, if this is the person You want me to be with, please bless it. If not, just take this relationship out.
Yeah.
That one prayer has always worked 100% of the time.
Yes.
So literally after I got the things fell apart that end of that week, and I got in my car. I'm like, message received. That next week, I met Kathy, and we've been together ever since. And we're coming up on 5 years together.
Happy anniversary!
Thank you. Yes, coming up in July. We celebrate our 2-year anniversary coming up in September. So
that's exciting.
It's been an amazing journey. There's been points where there's been absolute tears of joy. There's been tears of sadness, but it's one of those things where I would not have changed anything. Well, obviously, we would love to have had life just go perfectly smooth. But honestly, being the person who I am, I wouldn't be who I am if I hadn't faced the things I do. And that is the whole premise of my music, is I try to give back to people some strength. Songs like I Don't Belong Here is based on the prodigal son. Never Look Back is based on Psalm 23. And I try to give strength. It comes, it's not always... songs sometimes are very difficult to perform live because, like I said, they're very autobiographical. But for me, it's important that I, am promoting Christ in any way I can, and in every show I do. I mention right before I do Fight or Self-Destruct, which is usually the end of my show at the end of the night, I always mention, and I always told God, I said, I don't care what the world's like, I will always give credit to you. At the end of the show, going in the last song, whatever, I always the only thing that's kept me going all these years is my faith in Christ. And I love to be able to say it to large crowds because at that point, no one really knows that much about me or my music I'm playing. And it's a way that I can tell people and they're like, oh my gosh, it's subtle. But I never like to ever jam stuff down people's throat because that just turns people away. I like to be subtle, direct, but subtle about it. And if people want to talk to me, I'm always happy to talk to them. And I've had tons of people come up to me after shows and even just on the street and thank me for the different posts on Facebook and the message I do within my music. So that's to me. No matter what happens within my career or in life, that is what's important to me, is that I'm actually reaching some people and inspiring some people to either have, to have faith in Christ, to hold on for yet another day and stuff, because there's too many, the world is just completely out of control. And every day I feel we're getting closer and closer to the return of Christ because it feels, they said you wouldn't know the day, but you'd know the season. And I feel the season is here.
You also are able to keep a sense of humor through adversity with some of this music, particularly with relationships. Maybe my favorite song of yours is It's Not Me, It's You. Yeah. Kind of a turn on the words that most people say during a breakup. It's not you, it's me.
Right.
No, it's not me, it's you. And talk about that. What brought you to that without having to dredge up any bad memories?
I went through a whole series of relationships that... It just didn't work out for one reason or another. And in that particular song, all the lyrics in that song are true. And my one friend knows every person that's really, it's all very, very true. And I wanted to, it was actually the last song I worked on for my record. It was kind of a throwaway song. I was like, well, I wanted something because the song, my album itself is fairly serious, very heavy in places, very, it's not a lighthearted record in that, but I do have some moments in it. And I wanted to kind of give some kind of upbeat, fun kind of song that at the same time is giving a good message to it too. And
it does.
I sat down. It was one of the fastest songs I worked on. I literally spent only, usually my songs take months of work. I'm handcrafting them constantly. It's why it takes me so long to put records out. But this song I literally put together in a matter of just a couple of weeks, and from recording to writing the lyrics to mixing and mastering. It was just a really fun song to work on. And it came about because I was actually having a conversation at the time with one of the girls it's actually written about, and she was telling me about their friend, and she said this one thing is they're saying all this stuff that they were doing wrong, and I'm like, so basically it's not you, it's me. Or sorry, it's not me, it's you. And I went home that night and I went, there's a song there. So I started I wrote the music actually years before I had written even the lyrics.
Wow.
And so I went back to it. I went, let's have fun with this. And so I dove in and started writing these lyrics. And it was one of those songs that kind of more or less had, wrote itself. It was
wow.
it was, I really enjoy doing it. And it's very surreal performing it because, there was one time, one of the people it was written about was in the audience and they're singing along with it. And I'm going, okay, they have no idea that's written about them.
Oh, that is funny. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, that would be...
It happens.
Okay. And none of that rung true for them somehow. That's really funny. You mentioned that your parents did not push you towards this, but what was their response when their son, who'd always been interested in science and NASA, gone to space camp, the whole works, suddenly wants to become a musician as well, like Dad?
My parents were very supportive on any endeavor I put myself towards. So when I had, it was over time. I still follow the space program. I still follow constantly, NASA. I was heartbroken when the space shuttle program was shut down, but now with Spaceship X, I still follow all that. I'm still very deep into that. I just realized, I think more or less, I felt it was more my calling to do this. And actually, had I stayed as an astronaut, I'd be out of a job right now. So I felt more or less, I feel that music is a calling. It really is. And when you feel that, I've tried to go other directions at times. Like there's been, because, we always have ups and downs within our careers and lives and so forth. And there's been, I'm not going to say, that it was just, it's been, like you say, rosy. It's been times where it's been just heart-wrenching, the kind of work I do. But it always pulls me back to it, no matter what I've tried to do. I do a lot within film. I've directed several films as well as a multitude of music videos for people. I've worked down in Texas as the director of photography on a film called Safe. It actually won some awards back in 2010, 2011. And so with all those areas that I've worked in, though, I still always come back to music. And even when there's times when I just the last thing I want to think about is music, it still pulls me back to it. So I feel that that's where I need to be. I've asked God at times, I'm like, when there's, at any one moment, people are going to be like, why am I here? And even if, when you're working within that which God, calls you to do, sometimes you're like, was this really what I'm supposed to be doing? And I've asked myself that many a time. And, when there's been downtime and stuff, I hate downtime. Patience, if God's teaching me patience, it's taking me a long time to learn it. Yeah, but I mean,
that's a large club you belong to.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But they were always very supportive of me going into this. And I've always worked toward anything I need to do. Need to take vocal lessons, need to do drum, whatever I need to do. My parents have always been supportive and helped me out. My dad has always been there to help me if I need anything related to my job. They've always been like, okay, well here, I'll like the other day I was mixing for this country band I'm producing right now out of Cleveland called Post Road, and I'm working on their record right now. And actually, we're in the mixing phase of it. And the other night, I'm like, I need a second ear to listen to this because I'm mixing it. I'm like, I just want to make sure I'm getting this right. So I'll send out files to my dad on the road and and he'll send me back any comments. He said they're great. So I'm like, cool, I'm good.
That's great.
But it's music is a very subjective thing, and it's always different for everybody's ear. So for me, when I got into this, my parents like, whatever you want to do, they're behind. So they've always been right with me on that.
So cool. We have about a minute or two left. Let's peel back film a little bit. Okay. What have you been working on? What are you working on in the future?
Well, my wife and I back a few years ago put out a film called Encryption, and we're still kind of toying around with doing Encryption 2. It's a psychological thriller kind of thing. And then we're working on, my mom and I right now are working on a film called The One. It's a film about the rapture. And I can't even say too much about it because I don't even know that much about it entirely, even though I'm like the star in the film.
You're kind of writing it as you go?
Well, she's putting it together. She's got it all together. She just hasn't put the entire script fully together in form yet, but it's going to be an amazing, very powerful message. I'm a major character. I'm the star in the film as well as some other people. My wife's in it as well, and so it's going to be great. I'm working on several music videos right now for a multitude of people, including Dogwood Lane, actually, who's had their music play on the station as well. But working with them, working with several other artists and some other stuff coming up. And plus, I'm getting ready to release a couple new music videos. And just, I always, I grew up with a video camera next to my parents gave me a old Betamax. And so film and music kind of went parallel with me, so I always was working on those two simultaneously. So they're both my loves.
Where can we see these films?
If you, I maintain. Well, right now, Encryption is not available for viewing public yet. I'm working on trying to get that into either Amazon or on Netflix. But you can. All the music videos I work on, all those art projects, are all on YouTube. If you go to my official website, there's links to all that, so you can check all that out. I do a lot of music videos and demonstration videos for products and for different my endorsements and so forth. So there's a whole multitude of that on YouTube, and it's pretty easy to find.
Very cool. JoeVitaleJR.com
Yes.
will be your website. Thank you so much for joining us today on Our Community.